Hi, and welcome to the 5th 6 weeks science curriculum preview for 5th grade. Today we're going to talk about the organisms and environments unit. I want to draw your attention to the infographic that is on the right hand side of the screen. You might have seen this in the science lab, and it really outlines how we take our biome ecosystem view from 1st grade all the way up to 5th. So I want to take a minute to just talk about that and frame that and talk about what that means for 5th grade. Before we get started, just a couple of reminders. These are some of your key planning documents for planning a unit. As always, we're going to refer to the unit overview as well as the pacing guide. And so this is just a visual to show you where you can find those in forethought. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the infographic that was on the first slide. This is a little bit magnified view of that infographic, and what I've done is just taken the top of the infographic and moved it to the left hand side of the screen, and then you can see the rest of it on the right hand side of the screen. And you might have seen this infographic put up last year. It should be up in your science lab, and really it was designed to help all teachers understand the vertical alignment and where the biomes and ecosystem view fits in. And so as you look at the infographic, you can see that different grade levels focus on different biomes. And the idea is that as a student moves through the different grade levels, they'll be exposed to various biomes, and that's really going to help spiral that exposure. So by the time you get to 5th grade, the students really will have a pretty good experience looking at some of the life science standards in different applications. And so for 5th grade, that just really helps you know what you can touch back on, that they've studied in depth these different biomes, and that they should have a good understanding of those. Now, when we talk about different ecosystems and biomes for 5th grade, that can be in any kind of biome, not just these that are listed up here. But it will help with their application for their life science standards. Okay, and then just another reminder about this. This is from the scope and sequence, and this is just another text that kind of explains what I was just trying to illustrate with the infographic there, just so you know where they've been, so that you can build upon that. Okay, so let's talk about the pacing guide for Unit 5. We have 6 weeks to cover all of our organisms and environment standards, and it's pretty fast-paced. I know by this time of the year, sometimes we get a little bit behind in scope and sequence, and if you're more than a week behind, you're really going to have to look carefully at compacting your curriculum. Otherwise, you won't have enough time to review for STAR. And so we're going to talk in depth about the pacing for Unit 5, which actually goes into a little bit of the 6 weeks. But if you need help in compacting, if you're really far behind, just give me a call or an email and I can help you do that. I can kind of help you navigate those waters a little bit. So on the screen, you'll see the pacing guide for Unit 5, and you'll see it's blocked into 5 different areas, and they really do correlate with the calendar view. So that's what we're going to look at next as far as the order goes. So as I mentioned, we've got about 25 days in the 5th 6 weeks, and then we also take an additional 5 days from the 6 weeks to make Unit 5 altogether. So we'll illustrate that in just a sec. Okay, so here are 2 screenshots from our district calendar, and I've bracketed off the 5th 6 weeks so you can see how many days we're working with. And of course, we have spring break right here in March, and I'll block out a couple of other days as well. We have our science CBA on the 29th of March, and then of course we have our math and reading star at the end of March as well. And so as I mentioned, our pacing for this 6 weeks is going to have to be pretty tight with so many events happening. So if we chunk this into bits, we can see that at the beginning of the 6 weeks, we have about 9 days. And then we have about 5 days that we can probably count on for instruction at the end of March. And then another 9 days at the beginning of April. And then we'll take 5 days from the 6 weeks. So you can see the 17th or the 21st is actually included in Unit 5. That's a very quick pace. And so we'll take a look and see a little bit more detail about what maybe that should mean. Looking ahead after we get finished with Unit 5, our Unit 6 is actually a 10-day STAR review, so it's a little mini unit, and we'll start that at the very end of April. We'll continue that into the first week of May, and then of course that next week is going to be the STAR test on May the 10th. So that just kind of gives you a little look ahead. You will have a little bit of wiggle room if you're behind in the scope and sequence for Unit 5 in the life sciences. Let's say, for instance, you kind of get behind somewhere up in here. You can take some of these. This is a 5-day and a 5-day STAR review. You might not need all 10 days for the STAR review, and so you can kind of cross over into maybe these 5 days, but you're going to need at least a good solid 5 days to review before the STAR test. Okay, so let's take another view of exactly how the pacing might look as far as the content goes. So if we look at the pacing guide, the first section is going to be ecosystems, and on the pacing guide it says 10 days, so we have about 9 days here at the beginning. Then after spring break, food chains and food webs, we can probably cover that pretty well in week 3 of the 6 weeks. And then at the beginning of April, after our math and reading STAR, we'll talk about structures, functions, and traits, and that'll be about 9 days. And then the 5 days that we have in the 6 weeks, that's really compacted together, where we talk about life cycle review, as well as throw in the carbon dioxide and oxygen cycle. So you can see that the pacing on that is pretty quick, and that takes us up to the 21st. So here's that same view, but now instead of the little boxes with the content, that I just put the pacing guide up to the side. So you can pause this and then kind of take a look and see how that might fit in there together. But the pacing guide, remember, does bundle all of those standards together for you. And you can see that there is one readiness standard here in the ecosystems. There's one that comprises the food chains and food webs. There's 2 readiness standards here in the structures, functions, and traits, and then you can see the supporting standards down here. You could flip-flop here the structures, functions, and traits with the ecosystems. I just find taking a broader view with the ecosystems and then talking about food chains, structure, functions within the context of that ecosystem to make a little bit more sense for students, but you have to kind of judge what works best for your kids. Okay, so we talked a little bit about pacing and planning for the 5th 6 weeks. Looking ahead into the 6 weeks, this is from the scope and sequence. There's a 10-day mini unit that's going to be STAR review, and we will have an after-school science STAR review session on April the 6th, so you can save the date. That'll be from about 4:15 to about 5:30. I highly recommend that you come to that. Even if you've been teaching science for a while, we're going to hear from some veteran teachers about what they feel is essential, what they use, some do's and don'ts, maybe what they've learned over time, and you'll get an overview of everything that's available. And then looking ahead at the end of the year, we have another mini unit called Unit 7, and that's the Student Inquiry Institute. And we'll have another PD or Canvas to help you understand Unit 7, but that'll be a little bit after we get further into the spring. Okay, so just a reminder, if you are new to teaching 5th grade science and don't use these documents, you can find the resources to actually get your plans made in the unit overview. Those are in Forethought, and here's multi-pages there available for whatever you need. And just a couple of reminders as we do get going closer to STAR, most likely because this is the last unit that you are going to be introducing to your students, the STAR review will not be as focused as much on the organisms and environment standards because you've just taught it. So it's going to be really important that students focus in on these guiding questions, and you'll find those on the unit overview. And I've got those correlated by standards. And really, your students should be able to answer those questions using the vocabulary of the standard. So that's how you're going to know that they are ready to apply that on the standardized tests such as STAR, but also being successful with that. Also, because I know we have several new 5th grade science teachers this year, I just want to remind you, if you need background information on any standard, but you really needed it targeted for 5th grade, like how far do I go when we talk about interdependency and so forth, STEMscopes has a really great little section. And it's called Teacher Background, and it's in the Essentials, and it really targets what your kids need to know with the key concepts and so forth. So if you're in need of that framework, I just want to remind you that's there. Also, be sure that you are using your STAR released items for practice. We now have several years, all the way from 2012 to last year, 2016, we have several years of released items, so plenty of examples, and you can find those released items in two places in STEMscopes. One is under Standards and Wrapped, so if you go to the standard that you're looking at, it's going to be under Standards and Wrapped in Essentials. You can also find them in the assessment bank. Also, I want to remind you that there's a really great resource that's only for 5th grade called ReTeaks. You can find that in the grade level section here. It's right underneath here, and you can use these. It's really designed to be a review session for STAR, but you can also use it during initial instruction, and I find that especially with the life sciences, that is sometimes a good thing to use. So I want to pull over here for just a second and show you where this is live on the screen. So here I am in STEMscopes, and if you just go to grades and scroll down to ReTeaks. Now these are not necessarily by standard. They're just kind of general classifying matter, properties of water, and so forth, but they do follow our scope and sequence through here. And if you click on any of these, go ahead and go down here to life science. If you click on any of these, it'll open up this kind of familiar 5E model. And so there's going to be that Standards and Wrapped again, answer keys for it. Again, it gives you an overview of the lesson plan. There's an engage activity, which is usually pretty good, and explore, explain, and then the elaborate focuses on vocabulary, and then there's a little readiness assessment there. So again, you can use those during your initial instruction or for review. So just one tip though about the ReTeaks I just want to mention. When you get into the ReTeaks, you'll want to pick and choose things that are really going to move your student learning forward. And the one thing I want to caution you about is under the elaborate in the ReTeaks, there's a whole list of activities called Science Vocabulary. And there's the first one right here that you'll see that's kind of a general, usually a vocabulary game, something that's a little bit more hands-on, student-centered. And then the rest of these are really kind of worksheets. And while those might be fine for some applications, I just want to caution you not to overuse those, especially if you're going to use the ReTeaks for review. Those really don't do much other than just kind of generally at a low level reinforce the vocabulary. I would suggest that you really focus more on the science vocabulary that's first listed under the elaborate. So just a little tip there that I found as we've used this for a few years. Okay, so that was just a real quick overview of the unit, and I know that there were lots of different screenshots in there, and so if you go back into Canvas and scroll down below this presentation, you'll actually find the PowerPoint as a PDF. So if you'd like to just look at those slides that I have without me talking over them, that version is back in there as well. I want to just leave you with something else that I think might be very helpful for you. That's back in Canvas. So if you'll head back into Canvas under Just-in-Time Learning, there's going to be a resource there that I think you're going to find very helpful. And I'm going to go ahead and try to get back in there. So when you go back into Canvas, if you'll click on the s'more or if you'll click on the image of the s'more, you're going to see this new s'more that I just created. And this time of the year, it's always good to look ahead and see some of the opportunities that are coming up for teacher PD, but also for some summer institutes and field trip opportunities for life science. So I've compiled those all together in this s'more. And there are time-sensitive resources, so be sure to look at this as soon as possible so you don't miss out on some of the free resources that are available. So there's a mention about minicast that's coming up in February. There's lots of cool STEM opportunities for camps for students as well as opportunities for teachers. Some neat opportunities at BRIT, which is located in Fort Worth. And then at the bottom, and of course there's links with all of those so you can find out more about those. And then also here at the bottom, I've created a little PowerPoint that's a visual guide to all the resources that are available to you for life science, as well as some field trip connections. So when you click on that, you're going to see this additional PowerPoint, and this really is just a visual glossary. I've sent a lot of new materials this year, so I just wanted to be sure you know what is available to you as you move through the organisms and environment standards. So there's lots of them that are for 5th grade only, some lower grade levels as well. So just a reminder about some of the kits that are available for the different grade levels. And at the very end, I've got just the field trip connections for life sciences listed on there too. So that's something new that I hope that you'll find useful as you plan for this 6 weeks. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great 6 weeks. Please contact me as always if I can help you with anything. Thanks so much. Have a great day.